Welcome to the Pastor and Intern podcast with Pastor Eric Dyer, Intern Will Emery, and Content Lead Caleb Opwell.
Welcome back,
So
Caleb.
the milk cartons worked.
Yeah, we got a call, APB out,
Yep.
and answer some questions, but she's here.
She made it back.
Fantastic, yeah.
Two episodes off. Here she is.
Hey, it's okay. We're doing the summer, we're doing fun stuff.
Been a little
Right.
busy.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
It's okay. It's all right.
So today we're going to talk about VBS,
Mm,
okay, Vacation Bible School, all our favorite things to do,
That's right.
right, this time of the year.
mhm.
So I want to start with this question because you left us off with this last podcast. I don't know if you even remember this.
Well, probably not, but let's go for it.
So you said, when I said we were talking about VBS, you said, why yes to VBS? So
Mhm.
that's where I want to start this episode, is asking you the question, why yes to VBS?
First of all, Yes to VBS is the greatest song of all time. I just want
Okay.
to put that out there. That song is what all the kids want to do.
Did
so.
they still, I mean, is that just a new thing? Have they always played that song at VBS?
I don't remember.
I don't.
I think it was after my time.
I don't
I
think
don't
that they
remember either.
have, because I didn't have it whenever I first went to VBS.
Yeah.
But I think like maybe my last year they added it.
Yeah, I can remember all the times volunteering it having it, but I don't remember.
Right. But it's been there probably for 5 years, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, so why, and I mean, more of like, why is VBS such a
Yeah.
good thing?
Sure.
Why yes to VBS?
First of all, I don't think anyone who works Vacation Bible School thinks it's a vacation. Let me just put that out there.
Yeah, that's very true.
It did not feel like a vacation. But I think as the research comes out and shows, which I think we've known most of our lives, is that between the ages of 4 and 14 are the most promising years for people to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Like, if it's going to happen, the high probability of it happening is in those years. Now, it can happen after those years. I'm not saying it can't, but the majority of the time it's going to happen in that window. And I think that's probably the most important reason. The second most important reason is because it's a time for the whole church to put in a lot of hard work and effort into ministering to our children. And I feel like, especially at our church, and again, this isn't, it's not like we can help this, but, and like every church, everybody's so segregated all the time. Like, we're out here in our own building across the parking lot. The adults are in their classes, or they're in the sanctuary, and the children are off in this T-wing back here, behind a bunch of closed doors. And so I feel like we're all separated all the time. And VBS gives us a week where it's like an all hand, to me anyway. Now y'all might disagree, but to me it's like an all hands on deck. We're gonna show our kids how much we love them, how much they need Jesus, and all of that. And we're just gonna put down all of our ministries. Because for me, in VBS week, youth ministry really doesn't happen. Just to be honest, it just doesn't happen. Because that Sunday, we do all of our regular Sunday morning stuff, and then that night VBS starts. And then we don't have youth on Wednesday night because VBS is going on. So everything stops. And I think it's a perspective thing because, and I said this a couple weeks ago, but it's whenever VBS comes around, it's the whole week. Like, what other event do we do at church that stops everything for a whole week for a certain group of people, And I think that we should do that. And I'm a youth pastor, and I say this all the time, but children's ministry is the most important thing you can do. It just is, because you get them. Children are precious. Jesus tells us to love our children and to not prevent them from coming to him. And then I get them after that, which is fantastic and great. And youth ministry is really important. But children's ministry is the place where if they're going to accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, they're going to do it. And I think VBS is the avenue to do that. And I think the Southern Baptist Convention and our church would agree that is the moment in the year where we just stop what we're doing and we commit to a certain group of people in our church for a whole week. But
Right.
that's
So
just
would
my
you
opinion.
go as far to say that it may be the most important week of the church calendar?
I think it is. I really do. And we keep doing it. Like, it's not something that we choose to do, opt in or opt out. It's not like the Southern Baptist Convention where we either choose to go or choose to send somebody else. Like, we just do it. And we put in all this work, we invest all this money, we feed them all these meals, we train all these people to either teach or do moves or, whatever.
Right.
And, they're always updating VBS and doing things differently, whether I like that or not. That's a whole other issue. But they change some things every once in a while. But I think it's probably the best time of the year. It's at least for the church. Now, other days may be debatable, but I think as a whole week, it's probably the most important week in the church. I think it's just too important. You can't miss out on it.
Right.
It's just too good.
Well, and it's like the point you made. What other thing do we do in the church that everyone stops? And everything stops. There's no Wednesday night stuff, no Sunday night stuff, and everyone comes together
right
to work for VBS. So is there any biblical background for VBS? Is there any?
I mean, probably not specifically. I mean, there's no, because the church is just such a different thing than it used to be. The church used to be in a central area, and then after the disbursement, after all the persecution in Rome, we all kind of went in different places, and the church was starting to form like it is today. I'm not saying we do church perfectly, and if you read Francis Chan's book, you probably know his opinion on it. But anyway, I'm not going to go there. I don't think we do it perfectly, but I think churches just looks a lot different now, and it's a lot more organized. And I don't want to get into what people think about that, but it's just a lot different. It just looks different. Like they didn't have big church buildings and Mac buildings and crosses hung up the top of the steeple or whatever. And we have the ability to do that. And I feel like God has blessed us with the finances and the creativity and the time to be able to do that type of thing, especially in America. I would be really interested to know how VBS is run, or even if it is run outside of our country. Like, I don't know that it's even done unless we're putting it on. I know that sounds really like Americanly narcissistic, but I just don't know if other countries do it.
Right.
I'd be interested in reading on that, but I feel like it's just something that it's incredibly discipleship focused, it's incredibly fellowship focused, and to me, it's incredibly Bible focused. And so, I think all those things mashed together make VBS the great thing that it is.
Right. So more on a practical level, right, and then we'll jump back into a more spiritual idea, but. So, Eric, I know you've been, this question can be for both of you, but I know you've been a part of two different VBSs, meaning like morning and afternoon, right? One in the morning.
I'm used to it being in the morning, starting on Monday.
Right. So, what are the pros, like on a practical level, of the VBS we do here versus maybe a different VBS? Kayla, I don't know if you've ever been a part of a different. I haven't.
No, I haven't.
Are there any pros to maybe doing in the morning versus afternoon? Is there anything we do really well at VBS? Just more on a practical.
So again, the last time I went to VBS at my home church was probably, I'm 29, almost 30, probably 10 years ago. So there's that. So let me preface it with that. But what I will say is, I think a pro to doing it in the morning is that you don't have to feed them, because you can get them right after breakfast, and then you let them go at lunchtime. So you can give them like a snack in the middle. So it's like more practical as far as like money, I guess, spending money. Not that matters to me, but I feel like there's a meal you can skip in there. And then I just like Monday through Friday. I don't know. Like Friday to me is the end of the week.
Right.
And it's kind of like the final thing. And I've been trained that way. So when it's Thursday, I'm thinking to myself, okay, one more day.
Right.
But the reality is there's not one more day.
Yeah.
But I will say what First Baptist does better than my VBS, and maybe it's just because we're in 2019 and not 1997, is just the production value. Like the videos are so much better. They were probably playing them through a VHS player when I was a kid. Now, even watching it, they've infused some humor for adults in the videos. Just like Disney does. Like you watch a Disney movie 10 years later and you're like, that's a really adult joke, and I did not get that when I was 11 or whatever.
Right.
They do that really well. I don't know, I just feel like they've committed themselves to doing something really well, and our church specifically has a lot of talented people who can do lights and sound really well, and so it just looks good and it's fun. I don't remember having that much fun at VBS, and I love VBS. So.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's pros and cons to each one. I don't mind eating dinner every night, because one, it's free dinner, and two, I know the people that are doing it, and it's usually good.
Yeah.
And so I'm not complaining about that. I just think if you do it in the morning, you can get rid of some of that time for food, and it also frees up everybody's afternoon.
Right.
So you can still have summer and do whatever you want to do and go out on a lake or go to the beach or whatever, and then come back to do VBS the next morning.
Right.
But I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, and I would agree, and I don't say this just because I work in it, but I also the production level I think would be mine as well. I do think we do that really well.
Mhm.
I do see where we can improve in some different things, but just even more the videos, the lights, and people don't. I don't think people really know how much planning sort of goes into that. Time that takes to put that stuff up and get that going.
It takes a lot of time,
and it does. And we don't necessarily. And the funny thing about that is we do it for the kids. We do it for, the people who are experiencing VBS, but we also just enjoy doing it. We just love doing it. That I look forward to VBS every year. And this is what I tell our AV guy is that I look forward to doing VBS every year just because we get to really do whatever we want to.
Yeah. You get to be creative.
AV-wise, you get to, with lights and sound, and we can blow out the speakers we wanted to, but we can really do. And so I do think FPC does that really well. And then all the programming and stuff. I just don't know as much about that. But
yeah, because I preached the Sunday it started in Sunday morning, and I had to get up there, and I'm like preaching in front of this like jungle, right? And I made the comment like, I've never preached in a forest before. This is going to be interesting, and it's just, I don't know, there's just something. Because you're doing it at your church, right? There's nothing different about the location, but it feels like kind of like camp. Does that make sense? Like it kind of gives you a taste of what that camp experience is like. You're coming away from what you normally do, and you're doing something different in a different location. It's kind of how it feels, but yet you're still in the same church at the same place with the same people that you're with all the time. It's just we're all wearing the same shirt, and we're in the jungle, or we're in the desert, or we're in space, or whatever it is.
But I think it's a really good evangelistic tool. We got kids that come from all over the place.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity to reach out to the community too. I mean, because I know growing up, VBS was babysitting. Like that's what it was. It was like, and especially if you ask my wife, she's like, "Yeah, I was at a different VBS every week, at a different church, because it was free babysitting."
Right.
Which I know that sounds terrible, and it is terrible. But that's what they did. They're like, well, what are we going to do with Julia? Well, Second Baptist down the road is having VBS this week, so we'll just drop her off there.
Drop her off there.
So anyway, but yeah, I think it's great, and I love the way that we do it. And I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. Like I'm not saying that Monday through Friday is perfect. I'm not saying Sunday through Thursday is perfect. You can do however you want to do it, and it'll be good.
Right. So I know, and I don't really have any memory of VBS. I have like 1 or 2 memories of VBS actually participating in VBS. I can remember sitting in front of a TV and doing moves. But other than that, I don't really have any memory. Because I'd like to say that, my salvation occurred through VBS. I have these really fond, I don't have bad memories, I just don't remember.
Yeah.
I probably have better memories volunteering and helping at VBS just because it's fun to do. And so do you guys, and Kayla, you could start us off, do you have any like significant memories from VBS? Any like significant things that happened in your life that really helped you through maybe VBS?
I wouldn't say that I have anything super significant that happened at VBS, but I will say that I went all while I was younger at our church and at different churches. And I absolutely loved VBS. And even though like my salvation didn't occur through VBS, I do feel like that going, it instilled a lot of scripture in me, and I learned a lot of good biblical truths that I wouldn't have necessarily gotten a week full of if I wouldn't have went to VBS. So even though my salvation didn't occur through that, I loved it, and I always got a lot out of it. And I do feel like even though I was super young, that I did grow and learn a lot through that week.
Well, Eric, so I know you have a pretty significant...
Yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of VBS, obviously. Well, I remember, and like I said on Sunday morning, I remember, I could not remember for the life of me what the theme was when I got saved at VBS. And I looked it up, and I was highly disappointed. It was like the Wranglers or something lame. Like we weren't in the jungle, we weren't in space, we were in the desert. Like it was like the Oregon Trail. And I'm like, God had to have worked through me because that's really lame. But I remember getting saved at VBS. I was sitting in a pew that's no longer there, in a building that's no longer the sanctuary at my church. It's now the fellowship hall. And I remember sitting in the pew and just, I don't know, like I'd never really critically thought about Jesus before or the gospel or who God was. I'd always loved coming to church and being a part of it and praying and reading my Bible and all that stuff, but just never clicked. But I remember it clicking that whole week, and they do their salvation thing on Thursday, and then they had the huge like explosion on Friday or whatever. And I remember, I was like, okay, I'm gonna walk up there. I'm gonna talk to the children's person. Blah 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 blah. I'm gonna do this, but for whatever reason, I hesitated. I don't know what it was. I was 7. I don't know what it was. But the guy next to me, I can't remember his name now, but he said, hey, I'm going to walk up there. Do you want to walk up there with me? And I remember going, yes, I'm going to do that. And so I walked up there, got saved. So I'm a huge fan. So that's my number one memory. I'm a huge fan. VBS, got saved at 7. A memory that I don't have full like remembrance of that week, but that moment is very defined in my brain. And the second thing I remember is they do like all the, this is years later. It may be even the first year I volunteered or helped out as a kid. But I remember, I think it was like a space theme or something, and they do the offering for the missions or whatever. And I remember a bunch of me and my friends were real jerks, and we got one of the envelopes for the offering, and we filled it with rocks. And we put it in the offering plate.
Wow.
Yeah, we were real jerks. So anyway, but yeah, those are my top 2 favorite. Very different memories, but very
Yeah, polar opposites.
It was very fantastic.
So I think the reality is that there are a lot of your stories out there, right? There are a lot and a lot of kids that get saved through VBS, right? Mm-hmm. So what do we do post VBS? How do we keep those kids? How do we keep, what does that look like after VBS is over on a more pastoral level, I guess?
Well, unlike youth ministry, which they can drive some of them, it's hard to keep anybody because it's like a mixture of, you've got children, so you've got their parents to deal with, right? They can't transport themselves, and who knows if they're even a member of your church or a member of anybody's church, right? So I think all the churches were required to do is to reach out to those people. Like, hey, Sally got saved Wednesday night, and I don't know if you're a part of a local church, but I'd really like for you and your family to come on Sunday morning and talk about it in front of the church or stand up in front of the church or whatever. And you may hear through them, okay, we actually go to the church down the road or whatever, and you're like, great, and you've done your due diligence. Because I think we put so much, and this is just kind of my soapbox thing, we put so much pressure on follow-up with people that I feel like we feel like failures if we don't get them back. Mm-hmm. And I just don't feel like that needs to be the case, because we had a girl get saved at summer camp, and I talked to her and I said, hey, we would love to have you here. Do you go to church anymore? She goes, well, we go to this church, but we don't really go. And I'm like, that's fine, but I would really like for you to come to this church all the time, right? Like, I'm not trying to steal her away from a church, but if she's not going to that church anyway, why don't you come to our church, right?
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I did my due diligence there, because then it's in their ballpark to do whatever they want to do. And again, it's hard to keep up with 200. But when of decisions that were made or whatever, you can reach out to those parents and say, hey, if you don't have anywhere to go, this is a great place for you to be at. And most likely they're going to say no, or we go somewhere else or whatever. But I feel like that has to happen. I feel like you've got to talk to the parents, because unlike youth ministry, where I feel like I have a bigger responsibility to do more than just that, children's ministry is probably a little less. Yeah. So I feel like, because it's more on the parents and less on you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I agree.
Okay.
You have to reach those parents somehow.
Right. And that's hard
to get them there. And so, that definitely can be difficult.
Right.
Because you never know what situation that child's coming from.
And you never know.
It's more up to the parent than the kid.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Because they can't get themselves here.
Right. Which youth ministry is a lot like that too. But at least some of them can drive.
Yeah.
And choose to be here.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway.
So, any closing thoughts on VBS?
I think I would just say, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad if you didn't participate in VBS or whatever, but if you're a member of a local church and you are serious about your walk with Jesus and you're serious about reaching people with the gospel, I really believe that you need to take a week out of your year to be at church. I really do. Of all the weeks and all the events you could be a part of, I really believe that this is something. that you need to do. And I understand that it's in the summer, and I understand that there's family vacations and summer and camps and sports and all this stuff. But, you know, is that of equal importance to this super evangelistic event based on children for the gospel? I don't think that it is. I don't think that there's a choice. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like this is something that you should subconsciously be looking at your calendar going, okay, I need to fit this in. I need to be here. Because to me, if one kid out of the 200 gets saved at VBS, that's worth it, right? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, and if God's throwing a party for them in heaven, there's really no excuse for no one to be here. And I'm not saying that you have to teach a class. Cook food, do administration, do rec, do whatever, do what you love to do crafts, whatever, but be here. Mm-hmm. Because not only is it good for you to be here, and because God is allowing you to do it. Like, God is inviting everyone in the church to be a part of the salvation of some of these children. And when you choose not to participate in that, it's almost as though you're saying, God, I've got other things to do. But especially after summer camp, seeing that girl get saved, it's like there's nothing else matters. All this other stuff is trivial, you know? Like my vacation or my plans or, you know, what I would rather do is almost irrelevant because this person's going to be in heaven someday. Not that I had anything to do with it, but God allowed me to be a part of it, so why am I trying to do something different? So I would just challenge people to be there. Just be there.
Yeah. I would, and if I can add to that, I think the question may be asked, well, what if I can't do children, you know, not a big children person.
Yeah.
And I think it's less about you being able to deal with children and more about you growing as a member.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, my position, my volunteer spot or whatever at VBS, I don't deal with children at all. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm up in the sound booth practically the entire time. But what that does do is help me grow with the other members that I'm around.
Right.
All the time. And I think so even if you don't deal with children, there are spots at VBS to help, you know, for you don't have to directly. And so I think that's beneficial.
And I feel like, and this may be a different podcast for a different day, but we're so focused on like what God's specific calling is for our life that we miss out on what's going on right now. And I feel like God, and I say this to people all the time, is your yes needs to be on the table. Like, God, my yes is on the table. I'll do whatever you want me to do, whenever, however. I'm going to do what you want me to do. And that's all that he requires of you. Mm-hmm. He doesn't ask you to figure it out because you can't. He doesn't ask you to have all the answers because you can't get those. He just asks you to put your yes on the table. And I think VBS is a yes that you have to have on the table. I really do. Like, yes, I will do this. I will be here.
Right.
And again, I don't say to make anybody feel bad, but at the same time, you've got to realize what's at stake here. Like, what do I want to be a part of something like this? And even if you're an AV, like, does that make a salvation of a kid any less?
Right.
Than if you were the person that prayed with them? No, it doesn't. You had a part to play in it. Not to give yourself glory. That's not what it's about. But God is allowing you to be a part of the process. And I think that that's amazing.
Yeah. And I just think it helps you grow spiritually more than just, you know, you're pouring out all week. I think if anything, VBS pours into me as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's a kind of a balancing thing.
Kayla, you got any final thoughts for us?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Well, I want to end the podcast by reading the verse for VBS. It is John chapter 20, verse 31. And it says, "But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have a life in his name." Thank you for listening to the Pastor and Intern podcast. As always, we want to thank our church family. Thank you so much. We want to thank all of our listeners. Without you, we wouldn't have an audience. And so thank you so much.
Be sure to go check us out on all of our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and be sure to subscribe to us anywhere podcasts can be found.
Next week, we'll be talking about neglected Bible books. I'm sure somewhere in the Minor Prophets, right? Somewhere in that area.
Nehemiah, right?
Yeah, on the podcast. So we are for the Word, for the truth, and for the church. Thanks again for listening to the Pastor and Intern podcast.